Okay. Becoming a licensed master social worker in the state of New York. Group project by Jody Bates, Sherry Cruz, and Cheryl Galligan. Educational requirements and continuing education will be covered by Jody Bates. Sherry Cruz will be covering the history and how social work has developed over the years, and Cheryl Galligan will be covering the organization's memberships and ethics of social work. Finally, we will be sharing a link of our interview with a licensed master social worker facilitated by Cheryl Galligan. Due to the competitive nature of this field, an advanced education is becoming a necessity. All require that a program must be accredited. Even an entry-level position in the field requires a bachelor's degree to secure even an interview. Many positions require a master's degree, and in some cases, a doctorate is required. And again, all programs must be accredited. And this is true in all 50 states, not just New York. The educational requirements for licensure as a mental health counselor can only be met through the completion of graduate level courses at an acceptable degree granting institution. The state of New York requires that all licensed master social workers pass a master's level exam from the Association of Social Work Boards. 36 hours of approved continuing education is required every 3 years. During that time frame, only 12 of those hours can be considered self-study. All continuing education must be approved. In the next slides, Sherry will be covering the history and the development of social work.
Thank you, Jody. Let me get my screen up here. All right. Now, yes, I'm going to go over the history of social work, and I just want to quote Gordon B. Hinckley, who's a leader in the Church of Latter-day Saints, and he says, "The happiest people he knows are the people who give their lives in serving others." And that's what social work does. And throughout history, we can see social work, even examples in the Old Testament of Moses, the prophet that sought God to change a nation and proclaim his word through the laws and statutes. And we see David, the great king and servant of all, who fought wars and loved God to change a nation by seeking him and loving God. But there's a great hunger inside of humanity that wants to serve people that are in need and suffering. And social workers accomplish just that. And we can see the start of it is in the 1500s, and I say that only because that's the first time they got money from political leaders where they were able to actually pay themselves. And so this is the first time in the 1500s we see where they get paid. 300 years later, in the 1800s, we see the growth of cities and urban populations where there was a need for social workers. And so institutions came like schools, asylums, and orphanages. And shortly after, two organizations formed called the Charity Organization Society and the Settlement Movement. And the Charity Organization Society is actually the first place where there was a client and counselor relationship where treatment plans were designed, and they actually had an action plan on how to bring them to emotional health. In the settlement movement, that's where we find homeless shelters and communities where people would actually give their lives to serve the community. So they would live with them, feed them, and give their daily lives to it. And one example is the Whole House, founded by Jane Addams in Chicago in 1889. And this is one of the most famous settlement houses, and it's actually a museum now in Chicago. And she gave her life to helping the community. Homeless would come in, they'd feed them, house them, and it's a pretty neat house there. Next, as we move on, they actually created books and articles from 1889 up until 1940 that created methods and treatment plans to be studied during these years, and there became an emphasis on learning the social and family systems between the 1940s and 1950s. In 1955, a National Association for Social Work was formed, the NASW, and the NASW then formed Certified Social Workers, the Academy of Certified Social Workers, and this sets standards of practice for master's level social workers. Social work's influence on the counseling profession provides an understanding of the individual from a family and social system perspective, and the concepts in social work are used in the counselor-client relationship, and counselors use social work's training programs for more field experience. And what we have learned through this is that each person is greatly affected by the culture and community that surrounds them, and we all affect one another. Social work's main objective is to understand the individual in these social and family settings, and therefore affects the community by influencing individuals to greater emotional health. So now we're going to go to Cheryl, who's going to talk about the ethics and memberships in social work. And I need to stop share.
Thank you, Sherry. Your screen. And I'm sorry. Okay. It's strongly recommended for anyone who works in the mental health field to join professional memberships or organizations. They will provide for their members support in the field, networking, education opportunities, such as conferences. They'll give them a code of ethics in the field and the standards. They will also keep them updated on policies and legislation. The National Association of Social Workers is a national organization, and there are chapters throughout the country. The New York State chapter provides the same thing as most of the other chapters, such as strength and unity in the profession. They provide promote and development of social work practices. They provide human and well-being through social action. Sorry, my arrows aren't working. The New York State School Social Workers Association is another organization a social worker can join if they work within the school system. They also provide the same things that the National Association provides. In addition, they have current requirements for the state of New York, any current legislation topics that are on the table, calendar events, as well as support for the counselors, the schools, including the teachers, the parents, and the children. The New York State Society for Clinical Social Work is more of a clinical setting, and they provide the same thing as the national one, as well as the Social Workers Association. However, they give more information regarding their area of expertise. They provide insurance information. Also, they have mentorship programs for students and grads that are new in the field. They provide job opportunities and billing information. They have a new professional task force that just started within the last few years that's specifically for new social workers in the field to provide them any key information they may need as far as program changes or legislation that may affect them. They also offer coursework, workshops, and presentations for them to get involved. There are some obvious benefits as being part of this membership, such as just being able to also collaborate with people within the field, and the biggest thing they use is the email, because the state is so large between Long Island, the city, and upstate. Practicing as a licensed social worker in New York State requires the social worker to follow the same code of ethics that are from the National Association, which means they need to be committed to the field. They need to have informed consent. They need to be competent in their field. There are 16 various areas that are covered by the Code of Ethics that are for all social workers. New York State has their own Code of Ethics that just group those Code of Ethics from the national standards into specific areas. I had the pleasure of interviewing the licensed social worker. She's a master social worker. She works in a high school program. Some of the questions we had asked her were some of the challenges that she faced in her job, and the biggest one was, she said, was just the federal laws and the state laws and staying within them. She really enjoys her position as a social worker because she enjoys the kids, she enjoys helping the kids. She started out as a special ed teacher and chose to go into social work because she felt she wanted that connection and it was more rewarding as a social worker. She said as far as ethical changes, the hardest part is functioning in a school. It defines their work where she has to be involved with parents. She does have to worry about legal issues in the sense that there's certain things she can and can't disclose with being in a school system. And that proposes a challenge with some of the students that she works with within her program. Her daily duties include just counseling the kids, providing support for the teachers. She helps the kids that are in crisis. She also is in contact with school professionals as well as parents. And she is bilingual, so she is required very often to communicate with the bilingual parents that are in the program. Jody is going to summarize our presentation for us.
Okay, so throughout this presentation, we learned that social workers obtain proper training and educational requirements to become professional and ethical counselors in the field. And social workers see individuals from social and family settings and therefore affect the community toward emotional health. And as a final note, here is a link to our interview and our reference pages. We thank you, and we hope you enjoyed this presentation.